Hello and welcome to Election 2019, the State of the Economy, where we analyze how the government has performed in key sectors. Today we do a deep dive analysis of two infrastructure sectors, the power and the roads segment. First, let's talk about power, its performance over the last 5 years, and the big issues that the current BJP government has left on the table for the next government. We have an esteemed panel of guests joining us in just a bit. But first, let me go across to my colleague Anisha Jain for a check on how the numbers stack up in the power sector. Anisha, over to you.
Well, power sector has been making headlines the last few years, but not always for popular reasons. Now, despite policy initiatives, the beleaguered sector continues to be one of the biggest contributors to the banking stress. Now, over the last 5 years, the pace of generation growth has actually slowed down from 8% in FY15 to 4% in the 11th month of FY19. Now, the government defends this by saying that the decline is partly on account of use of energy-efficient instruments like CFL, LED, etc. But still, a 4% growth for a growing economy like India looks paltry. Now, even if you look at the PLF, which basically means the utilization level of a power company, that has declined from over 65% in FY14 to 61% in the 11 months of this year. And the fall is profound when you look at the private sector, because there the PLF have slipped from 62% right to 55.5% in the 11 months of this year. Now, remember, power is the one sector wherein we have heard a lot of big bang announcements, but the execution has been subpar. Now, the biggest of them all was the Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana scheme, which was launched in 2015 to turn around the Discom operations. Now, while the scheme did manage to narrow down the losses and saved interest costs to the tune of 34,000 crores, the actuals remain far from the target that the government had set. For example, AT&C losses were at around 19 to 21% versus the target of around 15%. Now, other schemes like Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gram Jyoti Yojana were launched to achieve 100% electrification, but it continues to be a part of BJP manifesto for 2019 as well. Now, in terms of other achievements, yes, India did improve its rating to 24 in World Banking's ease of doing business in terms of getting electricity versus 137 in 2014. And the government also did a lot to improve the last mile connectivity, and hence the transmission capacity improved tremendously over the last 5 years. And that is pretty much evident in Power Grid's capex plan as well. However, the resolution of the entrenched systemic issues are far from over. One of the big unfinished agendas of this government is the lack of improvement in the health of DISCOMs. For example, the receivables from DISCOMs continue to mount, and inadequate hikes in power tariffs as well as late subsidies from states have been attributed as the main challenges. Also, issues like inadequate coal supply and lack of new PPAs continue to be an overhang. Now, over the last 5 years, a lot has been done in terms of policy initiatives like Samadhan, Shakti, Parivartan to manage the banking stress, but hardly any progress has been made, and a lot of these projects continue to be stranded. As a result, the stocks also haven't generated much wealth. You can see on your screen, while the Nifty returned at an annual rate of around 12%, the power sector did not perform much. Back to you.
Let's now invite our guests, Anil Swarup, former Secretary of the Coal Ministry, Harry Dhol, Director General of the Independent Power Producers Association of India, and Dr. Pramod Dev, former Chairman of the CERC, the Central Electricity Regulator. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Mr. Swarup, if I may start with you, the promise of power for all substantially fulfilled. Power availability has been extended to practically all the villages in the country, and yet we see this peculiar phenomenon of growth of power consumption rising by the lowest in the last many years, just 4% in the year that has just ended. How do you explain this quandary?
See, the government needs to be complimented in reaching out to the lowest level. I think Deen Dayal Upadhyay Yojana was a massive success. So I think the potential has been created to deliver power to everyone in the country, and that's a remarkable achievement. But the problem fundamentally is with the DISCOMs. That's where most of the consumption of power is. If the health of DISCOMs does not improve, and as it is not, I think we are in serious trouble, because it has a spiraling effect. So if the DISCOMs don't do well and they are not economically viable or financially sound, then it leads to serious problems. They don't pay up the power gencos don't pay up the Coal India, and so on and so forth, and the assets will continue to be a serious problem, the power assets. So the fundamental address should have been through the Uday scheme, which started off so well, which started off very promisingly, creating a lot of fiscal space for the DISCOMs to do well. But unfortunately, what happened in Gujarat could not be replicated elsewhere in the country. There was a model available in the country that should have been, could have been replicated, but unfortunately it wasn't. So DISCOMs are in real trouble. So irrespective of the fact whether you are creating that ability to deliver power at the lowest level, if you don't have power and the DISCOMs are not capable of buying more power, how are they going to deliver it? And this actually results in a lower consumption of power. As you say, the growth is only 4%. It also reflects perhaps the manufacturing sector, but even otherwise, I think DISCOMs are not in a position to buy more power.
Yes, Mr. Swaroop, actually, let me take that question straight away to Mr. Pramod Dev, who has seen many of these cycles. Actually, I have seen so many of these cycles. As a cub reporter in 2003, we reported the same thing, DISCOMs not able to pay. And then, you know, actually, some of their loans also got transferred to the state government. At that time, there was a demand that they become SLR also, those bonds. And then again in 2013, we went through the same thing. And then we go through in 2016 with Uday. Mr. Dev, I mean, this is a law and order problem. AT&C losses have come down by all of 2 percentage points in 5 years. Uday had promised that AT&C losses will come down to 15%. They still stand at 19%. It's a simple law and order problem, isn't it? Why is it so difficult to tackle at the state level?
Well, having worked as a regulator, both at the state and center, I can say that electricity for all practical purposes is a state subject. After all, the state government had to finally face the election, and also they had to look after their political interests. And the problem comes is they have been doing charity at the cost of the DISCOM. So what they have been doing is that they are asking DISCOM not to raise tariffs, not to raise the rates, and continue to supply electricity. Now the DISCOMs face a problem because they can't borrow, because their borrowing capacity is very low now. Now, that's why the Uday was a very welcome thing, where it put the responsibility on the states. It asked the states to take over their debts. But after that, again, the same situation cycle has started recurring. And that's why we are facing this issue. Though you might have taken electricity to every village or even almost every willing household, but problem is, for the DISCOM, if they buy electricity to supply to these remote areas, they are not the paying customer. Whereas the paying customers are your industrial and commercial consumers. So what they want to do is they want to supply to the revenue earning customer and then starve the others. So this is the problem which is basically built in the whole system.
Mr. Dhaul, what are the 2 or 3 things that the new government needs to do in order to address these very challenges, you know, mounting receivables, inadequate hikes in power tariffs, late subsidy disbursals, all of which is resulting in the problems at the DISCOM's end. What do you think the 2 or 3 things are that the new government needs to do immediately?
Well, the first thing that the government needs to look at is it is to make up its mind that the power sector has 2 pieces to it. One is the competitively bid, market-oriented, consumer-friendly sector, and the other is the cost-plus sector. If you look very carefully, you'll find that DISCOMs come under the second category. There's a cost-plus. There is no incentive or handle to bring in competition or efficiency. Therefore, there is nothing happening in terms of improving service or improving consumer prices. As the earlier speakers mentioned, you have to end up paying a lot of money just to subsidize the losses of the DISCOMs. The other point, which was very important, was the fact you can't meter most of the power that is flowing out into the rural areas. So therefore, quality of service, type of power available, etc. is a disaster in terms of the fact that you are not able to meter. Now that's all got to do with the political discourse, as Dr. Dev mentioned. So first is, make up your mind whether you want to create competition and bring in efficiency. I think the first thing the government needs to do is to bring in content and carriage in the distribution sector so that there is efficiency and the consumer gets a lower price. The second thing I think that needs to be done is we have a serious issue with coal supplies. Coal India, for example, in some cases has signed a contract, say for 100 tons, for example, supplies 60, sells the balance in the open market at a higher price, and then the generator has to pay a penalty for not being able to supply at least 85% of the power. So there are a lot of nitty-gritties that are there which can be ironed out very quickly once we have clarity of thought that we want to benefit the consumer. The entire dialogue and discourse in the power sector, unfortunately, for the last 25 years, has been either the generator or the transmitter or the distribution. It's not so. It's the consumer. You have to understand the consumer has to have the ability to pay. The rural stress that we are going through, for example, is pathetic. I'm told that the kind of load shedding that's going on is in the realm of 60% in some of the states. So these are all facts that need to be sorted out. But the macro issue is to decide whether the country needs to have a competitive power sector which is efficient, or whether you're going to hang on to the old legacy of cost plus, which is what has been going on since 1948, be it generators, be it transmission, be it distribution.
Mr. Swaroop, if you have to evaluate the government's performance, you gave them an A+ for the availability of electricity, making electricity available to every village. How would you rate their performance in terms of DISCOMs? I mean, after all, although Uday was announced by the central government, for the better part, for 3 out of the 5 years, 57% of India was ruled by BJP governments at the state level. A few of them were ruled by BJP allies. How do you explain then this performance of DISCOMs? Why was there not some cooperative federalism in this issue?
You know, as far as DISCOMs are concerned, I think the performance has been abysmal. It should have been much better, because there was indeed an example where it has happened. That is the state of Gujarat. What was really required to be done is to sit down and understand how did it happen in Gujarat. We've been discussing a lot of prescription about how to go about setting the power sector right. I think each one of us know what needs to be done. The question is to make it happen on the ground. The good news was that it had happened on the ground in the state of Gujarat. The tragedy was that perhaps we did not intensively engage with that state to understand how it happened and to make it happen elsewhere. In fact, as Coal Secretary had clearly suggested that there should be teams from, say, Rajasthan, which is an adjoining state, should visit Gujarat, understand from them, sit down and work out a detailed action plan with regard to how it has to be done, who will do it, by when it will be done, and fix responsibility. Unfortunately, the intensity with which Uday ought to have been implemented was not implemented, and that is the reason why we have trouble today. So had they gone about doing it in the manner in which Gujarat had done it, probably both Rajasthan, MP would have benefited. Similarly, Chhattisgarh had done much better than other states. States like Jharkhand could have benefited from Chhattisgarh. States like MP could have benefited. So we didn't really require rocket technology to turn around the power sector. The intention was there, the policy was there, the initiative was there, but perhaps the engagement that should have happened, the intensity of engagement was missing, and that's why, whereas on the one hand, we created a potential of delivering power to every household, we did not have power to deliver it there, and that's where the role of DISCOMs is very important. We can continue to discuss with regard to what needs to be done. I think that's known, the prescription is there. What is required is a sincere application on the ground, and we don't have to go elsewhere to learn how it needs to be done. It has been done, and it could have been done. Unfortunately, it was not done.
Okay, Mr. Daul, if you had to rate on a scale of 1 to 10 the Uday scheme, what would your rating be? And any more numbers with respect to, at the end of this government's tenure, which are the states that have the maximum power losses now? Which are the DISCOMs which are sitting at the highest amount of payables?
I'm sorry, I don't have the latest numbers on the DISCOM losses, but I would like to react to what Mr. Swaroop said, and that is that there is also the Gujarat model is a great point, but the Gujarat model also has some cost plus on transmission. It's facing a lot of problems on the way the competitive part has been dealt with. So if you ask me to rate the performance, I would say that this particular government started off on the wrong foot because they had a residual problem from the previous government, which is the 2006 National Tariff Policy. So, and the first thing that happened was the coal blocks, the coal mines that were running were absolutely sort of knocked off thanks to the fact that the Supreme Court took a decision based on the advice of the then Attorney General, who clearly said that we have no objection if all these coal blocks are stopped. So we started off on the wrong foot thanks to wrong advice and a problem which was not the creation of the BJP government. There was something which was going on from before. I would say that they tried very hard to recover and bring in a lot of schemes, and there's been a lot of dynamism. And so I would say that for effort, the government, I would give it 7 out of 10.
Mr. Deo, what would your rating be? What rating would you give the government for its performance in the power sector?
You see, if you ask me in the power sector, as far as central government is concerned, I would give them 8 out of 10. So whatever they have done, the schemes have been improved. If you were to take the Deen Dayal Upadhyaya Yojana, it's certainly an improvement. Earlier, the assumption was that once you take electricity to villages, you will be supplying only for lighting. So the capacity of the transformers which was supplied was very low. So, and it was expected that the state government and the DISCOMs will upgrade those transformers, which was not a reality. Now, having realized this Deen Dayal Upadhyaya Yojana has improved upon it. So that's such a positive thing. But the question remains, as you said, that nearly 57% of the states were under BJP. But it makes no difference whether BJP is in power or somebody else is in power. Now, Harry Dhawan has been talking about the market. But if you are talking of the market in the electricity sector, you can't have a market only at the top. You have to also go down to the supply, that is the fuel. And if you are talking of fuel, there is no appetite, because now the new act under the coal thing, you could have gone for privatization, but there is no appetite for that. That is something which next government has to do. But again, coming back to the DISCOM, it is the issue which has to be politically addressed, because the question comes is, this money has to come from state budget, not from the DISCOM's budget. DISCOMs have to be run on a commercial basis. And if you can do that, then obviously the market will develop. Otherwise, you'll have all these distortions.